Welcome back to On the Porch. Today we want to discuss about generational curses.
Okay.
And how we were impacted by our parents and how our kids are impacted by us, the Gen X's. Because
Right. Yeah,
our
we're the
parents
Gen X's. Yeah.
and our parents were baby boomers.
Yeah.
So
These doggone millenniums.
do you think let's see, what's the word? Do you think we negatively impacted our kids by giving them what
Everything.
everything what they wanted, or as Steve says, they're lazy.
No, I don't think that. Okay. So let me explain.
Okay.
This isn't. I'm not making a definitive statement when I say this.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, generally speaking, the millennial and newer generation don't have maybe the same work ethic as the baby boomers and the Gen Xers. And I don't mean that's because they're lazy. I just mean because we created a world where things were just kind of handed to them. And the one thing we discussed before is that, like, look at all the things that came about in the time that we were young to the time that our kids were born. So you think you take a random year like 1985 and you add 20 years to that. Think about all the technological advances that happened in that short 20 years and how different the world was and how different our lives were in that 20-year span. Our kids kind of grew up in that. So they don't know what life was like, before you could smoke anywhere or, I don't know, before you could just walk through security at an airport.
Right.
They have no frame of reference for that. They don't know about, maybe some of the older generation, the millennials know about, like, using a rotary phone and, it's just random things that we take.
Right. It's like the further, like the younger they are, they don't have those experiences.
They're less connected to it.
They're less connected because we were talking about MCI. AT&T is still around, but MCI is not around.
Right.
When you had to have a calling card, you
Call
would
long
go.
distance.
You had to, if you didn't have long distance on your phone, you would get a calling card. Because I used to go, before we got long distance on our phone, we didn't have long distance on the phone. I would go to Sam's Club and get a 500-minute calling card, and I would call my mother, and we would call on Sunday. So it was like, I'm not paying these long distance charges, because you got long distance charges whenever you made a phone call.
Yeah, and you can be in the same state, just a different area code. You will get a long distance charge.
And so kids don't know anything about that, because now with the cell phone, you can call it really anywhere.
Right, and to that extent, you can get anything that you need to know. Information is literally in the palm of your hands. When we had to go to the library and get encyclopedias and actually do things and speak to people, when now it's just kind of in the palm of their hands. And the millennials, for the most part, kind of grew up with that. Like, they perfected that. And I just think that, like, we created a world that made them less, I want to say, I don't want to say lazy or like soft, just maybe like less hardworking and more, almost a little more entitled, to where they feel like they deserve things without having to necessarily work for them. And there are certain things that I feel like especially in the U.S. that everyone deserves, like, healthcare, stuff like that. But there are things that maybe some of the millennials kind of take for granted because of the way that we grew up.
Right, but where's the generational curse?
Well, I think the curse is that we didn't create a world where our kids had the same drive, because of how the baby boomers grew up, and especially depending on what race you were. Honestly, in the United States, your life may have been really hard, and you kind of passed some of that work ethic that you had on to your Gen X kids.
Right, because they saw the parents going to work all the time, or they, like,
we were latchkey kids, like
yeah, you cannot have a latchkey
right.
kid right
So
now because, of the
it's just
kidnapping
dangerous.
and yeah, the dangers.
Yeah.
Because even here, like, he made us. We was in the store. We were in the grocery store one day, and he saw two little girls sitting on the floor near the magazines and the
Yeah.
books in the store. Parents were shopping, like you would have done back in the 70s.
Or the
You'd leave your
80s. Yeah.
80s. You leave the kids over there in the toy section or
Mhm.
wherever, and they're playing toys, and while you're shopping, you cannot do that now in 2000.
Right. 2023.
You cannot do that in the 2000s because kids were being kidnapped, coming up missing.
Or just being like sexually harassed or like
That
some
to
pervert,
everything,
whatever. Like you
all
never
those
know.
things. But when he made that statement, it just made me think about, wow, here you can do that. People, because one, they have a guard in most of the grocery stores.
Yeah.
So it's not that easy. You just pop up and grab a kid and just gonna walk out with one. No, you can leave your
And
kid
the way the aisles are situated, like there's really only one easy way out.
the way you came
Yeah,
in.
you're either gonna buy something and get out, or you're gonna go around and go out the way you came in. So I think just culturally it's different.
Right.
Because those two little girls were just literally sitting down on the floor reading books, minding the business,
Right.
not paying anyone any attention. And we used to do that a lot when we were growing up.
Yeah.
Our parents did that to us,
But it's different.
But we realized, like, you know what? Maybe that isn't the best thing to do here in the States, in the United States. So like we created an environment where our kids didn't really have to deal with the things that we did. We kind of gave them everything that they wanted as in addition to the things that they needed. Whereas when we were young, we kind of had to either work for those things, or those things were kind of rare, the things that we just really wanted that we got. And I think let's be honest, Generation X are the ones that created the participation trophies. Millennials didn't create that. We kind of created that. Not all of, I'm not saying everything I'm saying is just, I'm just speaking in general, not everybody.
Not in totality.
A lot of people in our generation created that. Well,
Where-
everyone should be included no matter what their participation level is. And when the Generation Xers and Boomers grew up, it was competition is competition. Like, you were a winner, maybe first, second, or third. But after that, like, you're not getting a trophy, you're not getting anything. You try harder next time.
Right. And it's just basically, you knew that if you won, you were either going to come in first, second, or third. And if you didn't, the goal was to try harder for the next competition to get into those places. But now when you're passing out trophies to everyone, no one has to drive.
No incentive.
No incentive to do better, to be better at what you're doing. Because now when you look at some things that are done are just mediocre.
Yeah.
No one has like, oh, I want this to be the very best.
Yeah, and it's a two-sided argument because on one hand, I can see the millennials' point because they're smart enough to know your environment, the house you live in, is only reinforcing their behavior. You're actually reinforcing their behavior. So discipline itself isn't the answer when it depends on who it's coming from in your environment. So what I mean by that is, like, I was disciplined harshly in my house, but I couldn't come back and say that in my mind mentally and say that my parents were doing any of the things that, it's not like they were creating any kind of bad example for me. So it's not like I could justify anything I was doing except for the fact that I was doing it because I felt like doing it.
Okay.
I wasn't influenced by, anything that was going on in my house.
Okay, so but millennials talk about beatings, whoopings,
Right, and it depends on who was doing it.
Right, it's a parent that's doing it.
No, I mean, like, if that parent is a bad example or just kind of not a very good human being, it doesn't matter if they're strong disciplinarians. All right? It takes like a solid foundation of everything. Like, we can.
I mean, you got to think about, some kids are different. If a parent is verbally abusive physically, those things are impactful on a child. Those things are traumatic, and it can impact that child when they become an adult. They either will do the same thing or they won't do the same thing because they didn't want those things happen to them. And so it's up to the parent of that child to understand how they traumatically affected that child's behavior as an adult, and how that child's relationship is with that parent. Because if you are verbally abusing your child, that child may not want to have a relationship with you, and that parent doesn't understand. And when that child comes to the parent and say, the reason why I don't want to be around you, the reason why I don't have a conversation is because when I was growing up, you said these things to me. You said I couldn't do these things, or I was this, I was that. And it's up to that parent to be able to say and understand they were wrong in that moment.
Right. But that takes a
And
human being that can actually recognize that.
Right. And so what I'm saying, as a parent that's a Gen X, when I think about some of the things I've done and said, I have to be respectful to my child and say, you know what, I was wrong. And yes, I should have said those things, or I should have done those things. And there's no excuse other than, I was young, or I didn't understand fully how this could have impacted that person's life. But you have to be able to own your shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You, as a parent, you have to be able to own what you've done and how it impacted that child, to say, I'm sorry, I apologize, and understand that your kids are now adults. They're no longer children. You shouldn't talk to them in a child's manner. You should talk to them in an adult manner and have respect for them, just as well as you want them to respect you. You agree or disagree?
I agree, but we didn't finish talking about the discipline thing.
Okay.
Let me go back real quick. When it comes to disciplining your kids, the thing is, like, you can be totally harsh.
Really?
No, listen what I'm saying. Like, you could be the kind of person that's really harsh to your kids, right?
Okay.
But at the same time, you're a good human being. You're a good person. You make good decisions. You do everything, as right as you possibly can.
As a parent.
As a parent.
Okay.
And your harsh punishment, when I say harsh, I don't mean like verbally abusive.
Because when you say harsh,
overly, I don't mean like overly physically abusive or anything like that. Just like like our average people back in the day when we were young, you get a whooping if you do something stupid. Or you might get a whooping from a neighbor if you do something stupid.
Okay, but they see that as abuse.
Right.
I'm talking about millennials.
Yeah.
We're talking about millennials.
And this is what I'm getting at. The problem is that, like, there are a lot of good parent millennials. There are some bad ones too. There are a lot of good parent millennials who may choose to go a different route when it comes to discipline.
Yes.
But some of those occasions might be the time where you might need to kind of do a little bit more old school disciplining. Because you're setting a good example. You're not like disciplining your kids for doing things that they see you doing. You know what I'm saying? You're disciplining them for doing things that you've explicitly told them not to do, and they never see you do it. You're a good example.
Okay, well, when you're talking about discipline,
like a spanking, a whooping, or whatever, an actual punishment, like actually taking something from that child that will.
Okay, so let's go to the whoopings and the spanking. As a person of color, as a black person, you know where that stems from.
Mm-hmm.
And
but that's not where it comes from. It's just something that was used against us.
And okay, but if we use that same type of abuse, same type of discipline on our own kids, you got it from because your parents, whoever is trickled down from slavery to make a person be obedient But there are other ways to make a person understand that their behavior is not acceptable without putting your hands on that person.
Okay, so to that point,
To that point,
we cannot say you can't have it both ways. We cannot say that this thing that was used against us in slavery shouldn't be used against our own kids. But at the same time, the reason that most black people are Christian is because the Bible was used against us in slavery.
I understand that too.
So
that's a whole nother topic.
Exactly.
So we're not gonna talk about that.
No. But what I'm saying is you can't have it both ways. Like you can't say, well, that thing that came from slavery is bad, but this thing is good. Like
I didn't say any of that.
No. I'm just saying, like, if you want to say, like, I know where that stems from. Okay, well, so does like our religion.
I get that, but that's a whole nother topic. We're talking about this because on religion, a lot of people don't agree with. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Let's stick to discipline, not religion. Because those two.
Well, I wasn't trying to go back to slavery.
But I'm just saying, when you're saying discipline and you're talking about spankings and whoopings, those things does stem from slavery. Because the way they felt that people would learn to be obedient is we have to tie you up to a tree.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other ways it is too.
Well, and castrate you and cut off. You know, it was abuse. It was actual abuse, like physical. That type of abuse basically instilled fear in people and in kids to not do something. And you shouldn't instill fear into someone, because when you do that, for as kids, it makes them not trust their parents or want to tell their parents anything. That's because it may, not all kids, some kids, you know, they may feel like I can't, if it's abuse, I cannot go to my parents because this person does this to me. This person treats me like this. And I'm saying, you know, you can, if your kids express bad behavior, as a parent, you can nip that in the bud without smacking them. And
very true.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, as a parent, the millennials are now trying to find better ways of disciplining their kids without actually putting hands on them.
True. But like I said, I think this is like there's so much information out there, and it's so easy for kids to get information, to see the things they want, and do the things they want. And they also, here's the other thing, they also don't have the same level of interaction that we did when we were younger.
Of course not, because they're not out.
Everything is online.
And things are different.
So, like, discipline has to be, I'm not saying it needs to be what it was when we were young. It just needs to be a little different.
And
I don't know. That's the thing.
Okay.
I don't know what the answer is. What I'm saying is that, like, discipline has to evolve. The problem is that, like, with some of the millennials, they don't know what that is.
Okay.
They don't want to do what their parents did.
Right.
And they don't know what the answer is because of this new generation that their kids that they have. This is a TikTok generation. They don't know how to deal with that. So it's like they're somewhere in the middle where they don't really know how to deal with this.
Well, let me say this.
Young generation.
Sometimes, like, you know, as a parent, and some parents, you know, single parents, some parents that have, some kids that have two-parent household, if both their parents are working all the time, you kind of leave your kid to their own devices, like to do whatever. And we were latchkey kids, but you either watch TV until your parents got home. You didn't have a computer to get on. You didn't have a phone. And I think the downfall for some of the millennials is giving their kids cell phones at an early age, because they're just open to seeing everything so quickly. And you know, as a child, they absorb everything. Yeah. And there's so much information coming in that it's just they just act out.
Right. But so you know, there's two sides of that. Obviously, that these kids nowadays can just absorb more information than we could. Like this, it's coming at them from all
Yes,
angles, so they can
right.
kind of absorb more. They can learn more. They learn stuff faster than we did when we were younger.
Exactly.
Um,
So with all that information coming to them, it's so fast. There are no
it's a
restrictions.
hard way to filter. It's hard to filter it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that you know what your kids are actually ingesting.
Right.
I don't know. There's no easy solution. When we come back to talking about like the curses and stuff, it's just that there are generational curses that are like family oriented. Like some families just have like a generational curse, where it be like getting locked up, stuff like that. And then there's like this overall overarching generational curse that I think we left the millennials, that we kind of, I don't know, we made it too easy. And it's not, I'm not
I'm
saying
not
life is
saying
easy. Don't get me wrong.
right,
I'm
because
not
I
saying
was
life is
like,
easy.
when you said
I'm
made
just
it
saying
too
we made
easy.
certain things just too easy and friendly for them, so that it made it more difficult when they got out into the world. It Reality kind of smacked them in the face, and they're like, "Wait, this isn't right." Now, here's the other thing: we also created some unfair advantages for ourselves in comparison to the millennials. So it was easier for us to buy a home than it is for a millennial now. It was definitely easier for the
Our
boomers to
parents,
do it.
yeah.
It was definitely easier for them to go to school. It was a little bit easier for us to go to school. Uh, those things were like a lot less expensive, and a lot more affordable, and able to, it was easier to achieve that. Or even if you did achieve that, it was easier to pay it off.
Right,
The
but
millennials are dealing with a whole situation that we created, that we made it easy for ourselves.
like you
No, there was a
should
stigma about going to
community
community college.
college instead of just going directly to
Yeah.
university. But going to community college was a easier way for you to go into a university, because you're not taking on all that debt. Because when you go into a community college, you are able to get grants and things to pay for school, and then those grants pay for books. With that being said, not just community college, but going to a technical school to learn a trade. No one wanted to do a trade. No one wanted
Yeah.
to do physical labor.
Yeah, not when we were coming up. Yeah, like it was like go to school. The people, it was almost like the smarter people, the ones who went and learned the trade.
Yeah, definitely, because that doesn't go anywhere. You're gonna need an electrician. You're gonna need a mechanic.
You
You're
need
gonna
somebody to fix an air conditioning unit. Yeah.
yeah, all of those things. But no, skip over that. Go straight to the university. Get this degree, and then get out here and make the same amount of money a person probably would make without a
You're
degree,
making less money than some of those technicians. Yeah.
or the person that's a trade. Because
Yeah.
I mean,
The trade person. The trade
right.
person also is making more money than you without the student loan debt.
Exactly, a plumber. Think
Yeah.
about a plumber.
Yeah, they did like an apprenticeship or something, and maybe took a few classes here and there, but just learned on the job, and
Yeah,
now they're killing it.
as parents of Gen X.
We messed up now. I would just say, to your point, we shouldn't beat up on millennials
No,
the way that we do, because we created who they are.
exactly.
We made them, all the things that we criticize them for. That's our fault. Like we made that. They didn't just
We wanted
come up with us. No, like this is how. This is a reaction to how they were raised by us.
yeah. So it is what it is, and hopefully, they see. I mean, I can't fault. They do see things differently,
As
and
much as we like it or hate it,
but you can thank us.
or not.
So thank you for joining us on the porch for this discussion. Until next time.
Ciao.
Bye.